The company vanished in 1969. But this ghost engine is still hauling freight in 2026. Think about that for a second. The people who built this machine are long gone. The factory in New York is a parking lot. There are no spare parts on a shelf. There is no corporate hotline to call when it breaks down. And yet, if you go to a small railroad in the middle of nowhere, you will hear a sound like a heavy heartbeat. It is the Alco prime mover. It is a ghost in the machine. While the new locomotives are being traded in like old cell phones, this beast is still screaming. It survived the death of its own creator. It survived 50 years of neglect. It belches black smoke like a dragon waking up from a long sleep. How does a machine keep working when the world that built it has been erased? And what did the builders in 1950 know about iron that we have completely forgotten today? The Schenectady factory was not just a building. It was a cathedral of iron and fire. 40 acres of stone, steel, and glass stretched along the Erie Boulevard, humming with the effort of thousands of hands. Inside, the air trembled with the clang of hammers and the roar of furnaces. Castings big enough to anchor a battleship hung from gantry cranes. The foundry floor ran hot with molten steel, poured into molds that would become crankshafts, frames, and the bones of locomotives meant to last a century. Overhead, the letters Alco stood out in block capitals, a mark of pride and warning. This was the heart of American heavy industry, the place where the Alco 244 prime mover and later the 251 engine were born. In the 1950s, Schenectady was the second largest locomotive works in the country. At its peak, the factory delivered more than 1,000 locomotives a year. The shop floors ran 3 shifts. Union men worked overtime, sometimes 30% above the standard week. The machine halls echoed day and night with the shaping of iron, the testing of prime movers, and the grinding of gears. Every corner of the plant was built for scale. The main assembly hall could swallow a city block. The forging press could flatten a car. The locomotive frames lined up in rows, each one waiting for its engine, its skin, and its fate. There was pride in every weld, every casting, every bolt torqued to spec. The masters of Schenectady knew they were building for the next 100 years. They left their initials in chalk on the engine blocks. They signed off on blueprints that would outlive them. The city around the plant felt the pulse of the works, a heartbeat of steam and steel that set the rhythm of daily life. When a new engine fired for the first time, the sound rolled out across the river, a promise that American iron could still move mountains. The loss of this place would not just be the closing of a factory, it would be the silencing of a giant. It starts as a rumor in the rails, a sound you feel in your ribs before you ever understand it. Some call it the Alco bark, others just call it the voice of iron. It is not a whistle or a horn. It is the sudden, sharp report that cracks out of the stack when a turbocharged Alco 244 prime mover wakes up under load. The bark is not polite. It is not smooth like an EMD sigh or the soft drone of a GE. It is a staccato blast, a living pulse that rises from deep inside the block and shakes the ground. Old heads say you can tell an Alco is coming by the way the air changes. It is the bark that warns you. The bark that tells you this machine was built for hard work, not for comfort. The secret sits inside the turbo. When the engineer opens the throttle, exhaust gases slam into the turbine, spinning it up in a rush. There is a heartbeat of turbo lag, maybe half a second, where the engine draws a deep breath. Then the pressure breaks loose. The turbo surges. The exhaust valves open. A column of hot gas explodes out, carrying the sound of every forged part and every hard mile. Spectral analysis by AHTS shows a dominant note at 350 Hz, with a sharp edge that rides above the rest. It is the sound of pressure released, of steel doing what it was born to do. Before you ever see the engine, you hear it. That is how you know you are in the presence of something older, something stubborn. Every time I hear the Alco bark, I say the same words, half ritual, half respect. The masters of Schenectady left the building 50 years ago, but their iron never got the message. It is still out there, haunting the branch lines, doing work that should be impossible. On April 23, 1969, the board of Alco Products Incorporated gathered in a paneled room, far from the noise of the Schenectady factory floor. The minutes, filed with the SEC as Form 10Q, record a unanimous vote to cease locomotive production and to liquidate the plant's assets. There was no drama, just signatures and silence. The company's last hope, merger talks with Fairbanks Morse, secret overtures to General Motors, a final pitch to General Electric, had all collapsed in closed-door meetings and terse letters. Fairbanks Morse wanted the tooling, not the legacy. The legal team at General Motors saw antitrust headaches. General Electric, once a partner, now had its own rising locomotive line and no need for Schenectady's iron. Trade magazines like Railway Age ran the headline, "Alco ends an era." The numbers were stark. Alco's market share had fallen from nearly 15% in 1949 to single digits by 1968. The last new order was a trickle, not a flood. In the board's own words, the company faced an insurmountable competitive disadvantage and an untenable financial position. No voice in the room spoke for the men on the floor or the city outside. The board's decision was final. The fate of 40 acres of steel and glass was sealed in a few lines of corporate prose. What had once been the heart of American heavy industry was now just another line item awaiting liquidation. The paperwork moved faster than the news. By the time the last locomotive rolled out in June, the plant's silence had already been decided. The masters of Schenectady left the building 50 years ago, but their iron never got the message. After the last shift clocked out, Erie Boulevard fell quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The trains kept running, but the ground itself seemed to lose its pulse. For decades, the Schenectady factory had set the rhythm of this city. Now the gates were locked and the echo of steel on steel faded to memory. At the corner bar, men sat with their pay stubs, staring at the newsprint that spelled out the end. Alco closes, 2,300 jobs lost, unemployment nearly doubled in a week. The Union Hall filled with the sound of boots on tile and voices trying to make sense of a future that had been erased overnight. Walter Jennings, a shop hand with 30 years in the pit, remembered the silence. He said you could hear the last 251 engine fire up one final time, just to prove it still had a heartbeat. Then nothing. The lights went out, the floor went cold, and the only thing left was the faint smell of oil and iron. Jennings kept his union card and a piece of crankshaft, a relic from a world that no longer had a place for men like him. The tooling, hundreds of dies, molds and jigs, was boxed up and shipped to auction. Some found new homes in distant rail shops. Most vanished, scattered like bones across the continent. The city felt hollow. You would walk past the factory and see your own reflection in the black glass, but nothing looked back. The silence became its own presence, heavy and unyielding. People spoke about the plant like it had died, but the truth was stranger. The machines built here refused to disappear. In the quiet, a new kind of legend took root. The ghost of Schenectady was born, not in noise, but in the absence left behind. Beneath the heavy steel of the Alco 244 prime mover, strength and vulnerability lived side by side. The block was built for punishment, massive castings, oversized bearings, a crankshaft that looked indestructible. But machinists in Schenectady soon found the flaw. Crankshaft journals wore down too fast, the steel pitting and spalling under relentless loads. Some blamed the alloy, others the pressure to beat EMD to market. Either way, the result was the same. Engines sidelined by fatigue, their power undercut by a hidden weakness. The turbocharger, a General Electric single-shaft design, promised a leap forward. On paper, it delivered instant power. In reality, it lagged, hesitating before a sudden, violent surge. That bark was unmistakable, but so was the risk. Overspeed sent turbine blades flexing, cracks forming at the roots, fatigue lines spreading. Field reports stacked up. Turbo failures, crank wear, cooling issues that left hot spots and chewed through liners. Every breakdown became a lesson. Machinists swapped out cranks, experimented with new bearing alloys, and added auxiliary pumps to push more coolant through the block. The shop floor became a workshop for survival, each fix recorded, each failure dissected. By 1956, the limits of the 244 were clear. It was tough, but not unbreakable. The answer came in the form of the Alco 251. Forged from low-alloy, high-strength steel, its crankshaft was surface-hardened and ground to tighter tolerances. The turbocharger got a wastegate regulator, taming overspeed and smoothing out the lag. Boost arrived with control, not chaos. The cooling system was overhauled with larger radiators, dual-circuit water flow, and a thermostatic pump pushing 1,200 gallons a minute. The 251 didn't just last longer, it ran cooler and cleaner, its bark all business. Machinists noticed the difference right away. The 244 fought back. The 251 responded. Throttle lag was measured, predictable. The bark was sharp, but it didn't punish the machine. Mechanics learned to trust the 251, calling it the last true iron heart from Schenectady. It became the backbone of short-line survival, the reason Alco engines still work in 2026, doing jobs that should have been impossible. The iron never gave up, and neither did the people who built it. A dead company sends no parts. When a turbo cracks or a cylinder liner fails, there is no hotline, no warehouse, just the stubborn will of mechanics and the leftovers of vanished factories. The men who built the Alcos are long gone, but their engines still rattle across the rails, refusing to die. Survival here is not luck, it is a craft. In the backshops of shortline America, old Alcos are kept alive by hands that know how to conjure something from nothing. When a 251 throws a rod, there is no catalog to call. The answer lies in the boneyards, rows of stripped shells, each a possible donor. Mechanics walk the lines, chalk in hand, marking what can be saved, a crankshaft here, a set of injectors there. Cannibalization is the ritual, but it is closer to organ transplant. One engine gives up its heart so another can run. In the shops, the air smells of cutting oil and hot steel. Machinists regrind crank journals, sleeve worn-out cylinders, and turn out bushings from blocks of alloy poured decades ago. Factory drawings, stained and creased, are passed around like relics. Every measurement is checked, every surface polished by hand. There are no shortcuts. The work is slow, but the result is a living engine. One more haul, one more impossible job made routine. When the supply of core parts dries up, ingenuity takes over. Fabricators at Schenectady Engine Works cut new manifold flanges from billet. In Roanoke, a retired machinist has built a jig for sleeving 251 liners, restoring them to spec. In Arkansas, a crew strips a gutted prime mover to its bones, then rebuilds it with pistons and rods scavenged from 3 donors, a whole heart job. The engine fires, coughs, then settles into that familiar bark. Not perfect, but alive. Nothing is wasted. The parts bank is a living organism, fed by the remains of the fallen. The language is direct, swap, rebuild, run it till it quits. Every successful repair is a small victory against silence. Every black plume is proof the old ways still have a voice. The company is gone, the parts pipeline a memory, but the machines endure, patched, pieced together, running on hope, sweat, and the last stubborn bits of American steel. The numbers don't lie. They sit in the cab, taped above the throttle, logged in grease-stained notebooks, etched into the memory of every mechanic who has ever watched an Alco drag a train up a grade that should have killed it. Here is what the logs say. On March 18, 2026, the old Alco 251 engine on the Newcastle and Western took a 4,800-ton grain train up the 2.2% hill at Pine Hollow. Throttle wide open, speed held steady at 17 miles per hour. Cylinder head temperatures peaked at 204 degrees. Oil pressure never dropped below 68 pounds per square inch. The tractive effort chart shows a pulse, 72,100 pounds at the rail, holding flat for nearly a mile. That is not theory. That is the black and white of the event recorder. Haul data from the Sierra Mountain Terminal tells the same story. A 1959 RS-11, rebuilt and running on scavenged parts, pulled a 5,200-ton mixed freight over the summit at a 1.8% grade. The logbook reads, "No slip, no stall. Turbo lag, barely a blink. Full boost by notch 6. Crew reports engine bark sharp and clean. Onboard telemetry shows fuel burn at 4.1 gallons per mile, right in line with modern 6-axle units. The numbers for lugging power are plain. Continuous tractive effort, 68,000 pounds. Peak, just over 70,000. Speed on the grade, 15 to 18 miles per hour, holding steady for the full climb. Every short line has a story like this: tonnage, speed, grade, and the stubborn refusal to quit. The numbers say what the legends only hint at. Lugging power is not a myth, it is a fact, stamped into the steel and proven every time the old iron breathes deep and hauls another impossible load. Every short line that keeps an Alco alive is making a choice. They are not chasing nostalgia or clinging to ghosts for the sake of memory. They are betting on iron. The numbers are there, but the real calculation is survival. A rebuilt Alco 251 engine can run a full season on less money than a modern lease. Mechanics keep notebooks full of oil pressure readings, bearing temperatures, and fuel flow numbers. But what matters most is the bottom line. A working Alco means fewer dollars spent on parts, less time lost to troubleshooting software, and more trains moved with what is already in the shop. Short line economics are a game of inches. Every dollar saved on a crankshaft, every hour shaved off a rebuild is a victory. The old ways demand patience and skill, but the payback is real. On the Newcastle and Western, a single Alco 251 engine pulls loads that would sideline a newer unit with a computer fault. The mechanics here know how to coax life from steel that should have given up. They keep the black book of part numbers and the ritual of the morning walk along the line, listening for the bark, feeling for the vibration that says the heart is strong. There is a phrase passed between shop foremen and engineers, half in jest, half in reverence. The masters of Schenectady left the building 50 years ago, but their iron never got the message. That black plume isn't a failure. It is the breath of a machine that was built when we still cared about the next 100 years. As long as that bark echoes across the rails, the company lives on, not in marble or memory, but in the work, the sweat, and the impossible freight still moving through the night. The masters of Schenectady left the building 50 years ago, but their iron never got the message. The Alco 244 prime mover and Alco 251 engine still answer the throttle, defying turbo lag and the age of disposable machines. That black plume is not a failure. It's the breath of a machine built when we still cared about the next 100 years. The forgotten king keeps working, and the world still needs its lugging power.